¿Cómo se dice mariposa en inglés? You say lift or elevator. ¿Seguro? Of course, you see. Both go floor to floor. Para fiestas y posadas. Welcome. Today I'm going to talk to you about barbacoa and barbecue. So the word barbacoa is the word that gave barbecue in English, which is very, very interesting. So I will speak a little about barbecue and then I will make a social critique. Now, barbacoa in Spanish can mean a variety of things. It can be, for example, a scaffold or some built contraption, something like that. But we will stay away from scaffolds, any of that, and we will focus only in the culinary arts. So barbacoa referring to food. Now, barbacoa referring to food is actually just a way of preparing meat. It's simply grilled meat. That is why many times you will hear individuals say, hey, let's go barbecue, right? And when people barbecue, they are just grilling meat. Sometimes they will use a special sauce, sometimes not so much. Now, if you have been to the US, many times there will be a variety of different barbecue sauces that people will use. Now, some of these sauces, they tend to be very viscous, so that's one of the differences compared to, for example, a Mexican barbecue, which I will show examples in a bit. But American sauces tend to be very viscous, and in many places they tend to be extremely sweet. In some places they're more savory. I prefer the savory sauces. The sweet ones, they get a little too sweet. And many people in the United States, many Anglo-Americans, they love spice. And to some of you that might be somewhat of a shock, and you might be thinking, it's like, well, if we were to compare Mexicans in the US versus non-Mexicans in the US, non-Mexicans in the US, they cannot handle spice. Really? Have you tried some of their barbecue sauces? My goodness. So anyway, that's, I guess, one way to defeat some stereotypes. Now, it is true that some Mexicans will overspice everything. Maybe I'll make another video about that in the future. But let's go back to barbecue. So, where does barbecue come from? So the term barbecue was adopted into the Spanish language around 1518. And originally it comes from a Aboriginal language in the Caribbean. So it's a Caribbean word that came into Spanish 1518. And then it appears in the English language through Spanish and Portuguese influence, Jamaica, in 1648 in the writings of a buccaneer at the time. But the word wasn't quite barbecue, it was more such as barbacado or barbacado, like barbecued, barbacado, barbecued. Those were the terms. So that's when it starts appearing. Now, according to Oxford Dictionary, it starts actually coming into the English language as something closer to barbecue around 1661, 1697. And then come the turn of the century, beginning of the 18th century, it's here to stay in the English language as barbecue. Barbecue is pretty much grilled meat. Now, the thing is, there are different concepts of barbecue when speaking to individuals. So let me go ahead and show you some examples from a quick Google search. So with a Google search, this is one of the things you can find for Mexican barbecue or barbacoa. As you can see, it's very brothy many times, and in places where I've been, generally it will be in a pot, just like this. You can't really see a pot. But these are some of the examples that we have here. And if we do a search for Cuban barbecue or barbacoa, estilo cubana, these are some of the results, which they look delicious. Versus if we look for, say, some type of American barbecue, for example, say Texan-style barbecue. Keep in mind that many times barbecue, it doesn't remember, it's barbecue, whatever it is. It generally refers to just grilled meat or even smoked meat. It doesn't necessarily have to have the sauce or the barbecue sauce. But as you can see, the sauce tends to be very viscous And depending on where in the United States, sometimes it's more on the sweet side, sometimes it's more on the savory side. I prefer the savory. If you prefer the sweet, go for it. More power to you. But here we go. So if you Google it, these are some of the examples. As you can see, if we focus on Mexican barbecue, it tends to be very brothy. If you go to different places, many times it's in a pot and there's broth in there. And sometimes they will serve you the broth in a cup if you want it, so you can add it to the meat, or you could just drink it if you want. As you can see, Cuban barbecue is delicious based on the pictures. I've not had it. Should have it someday. And I'm kidding, they're all delicious. But if you look at the American style barbecue, that's where you see the more traditional, just grilled meat. And I'm saying more traditional because it's just grilled meat as opposed to being made in a broth. But then again, barbecue is just a way of preparing meat, although usually grilled. But as you can see, in the United States, viscous sauces are preferred. So if you were to go to Mexico and ask for barbacoa, you're generally going to get this brothy meat. In the United States, it might be grilled meat. It might have some type of barbecue sauce, which will be very viscous and many times too sweet. Way too sweet. Why? Not always. So those are some of the things to keep in mind. Now, here's my social critique. Some time ago, I was in a city, Arandas, and in Arandas, they had sort of a US-style wing place. Right? So they served wings, barbecue wings. And when I was in there, I asked for flavor. They didn't have it, so I asked the waitress if I could have alitas a la barbacoa, so barbecue wings. Waitress said, no, we don't have any. And I thought, oh, great. What do you have? Right, you're out of everything. And the waitress looked at me and said, well, we have Parmesan, lemon pepper, barbecue. And as soon as she said barbecue, she said barbecue. I thought, oh, that was a facepalm moment. I was like, God, you've got to be kidding me. I was nice, well behaved, and I just asked the waitress, "Me da de barbecue," and I just said what she said. I was not about to go into a whole lesson and give her a whole history lesson of the word. But one of the things that I found out is that many Mexicans will say barbecue when it's the U.S. style. And for me, it was interesting, somewhat frustrating, I'll admit, but then interesting that many times they will borrow an English word into Spanish that originally comes from Spanish, mainly because if you ask them, many of them have no clue that barbecue comes from barbacoa and it's originally just a way of grilling meat. That's the reality. Therefore, it's somewhat sad at the same time. They don't really know enough about their language because nobody has really taught them. But don't worry, that's why I'm here. So hopefully after some of my videos and lessons, people will, rally up some pride when it comes to the Spanish language. I'm kidding. Actually, I do hope so, but we will see. But that is my social critique. Yes, I understand languages change over time, but we don't have to force the change, and there's a reason why we teach language. That might be a topic for another video. This being said, I hope you enjoyed this video about barbecue, how it comes from barbacoa, and the history, and I will catch you in the next one.